Good day, everyone. I am here to report to you the classifications of taxpayers' properties. So first, we will discuss what is ordinary assets. So ordinary assets are assets used in business, such as letter A, stock in trade of a taxpayer or other real property of a kind which would a property be included in the inventory of the taxpayer if on hand at the close of the taxable year. So, meaning nun, may regular siyang binibenta. So, may inventory siya. It means yung inventory, may paninda siya. So, that is an ordinary asset from the word inventory. So, dito kasi, ang ating taxpayer ay nagbi-business. May isa siyang business. Kaya siya ay, ang business niya is nagbebenta siya ng property. So, here, ang binibenta niyang property or dinidispose niya is part ng kanyang paninda or inventory talaga. So, under siya ng ordinary assets. Kapag may ang isang tao ay nagbi-business and may binibenta siya or dinidispose na under ng kanyang inventory, may papasok natin siya as ordinary assets. So, move on. Letter B, real property held by the taxpayer primarily for sale to customers in the ordinary course of his trade or business. So, dito naman ay parang parehas lang siya nung letter A. Basta, ang bahagi ng pagbebenta mo, kahit yon ay real property, like for example, ikaw ay subdivision business, ang business mo ay subdivision. And generally, regular mo siya ginagawa and nagbebenta ka ng real property. So, inventory mo din siya. It will be considered as ordinary assets. Pares lang siya nung una. Basta pasok siya ng inventory. Ang problema lang dito is nagbebenta ka ng real property. Kung nga, kasi halimbawa, ikaw ay yung nagtitinda ng, ang business mo ay subdivision. So, may, regularly mo siyang ginagawa and nagbebenta ka ng business. So, under yun ng ordinary assets. Kasi, ginagawa mo siyang business. Next, letter C, real property used in trade or business of a character which is subject to allowance for depreciation. So, dito naman, real property ang ginagamit mo sa business that is subject to the allowance of depreciation. So, like for example, mga computer, equipment, ginagamit mo siya for personal use for a business. So, subject to allowance of depreciation and that is considered as ordinary asset. Kasi, yung mga gamit na yon, yung computer equipment, ginagamit mo siya as business. Sa business mo siya ginagamit. So, ibig sabihin, under siya ng ordinary assets. So, next, the last one is letter D, real property used in trade or business of the taxpayer. So, sa letter D naman, about yan sa mga lupa, pinagtitirikan mo o tinatayuan mo ng business, basta bahagi siya ng business ay ordinary assets. Kunwari, ako ay may business, tapos may sarili akong lupa. And then yung lupang yon, ginamit ko siya na pagtatayuan ng business ko. So, yung lupang yon is under siya ng ordinary assets. Kasi ginagamit ko yung lupa ko or yung real property ko for business. Next is, business is habitual engagement in a commercial activity involving the regular use of a goods or services for a profit. Non-profit entities are not business. So, sa business, yun nga, ang ginagawa naman niya, magkakaroon ka, may o-offer kang goods or services to make a profit. So, kapag wala kang, hindi non-profit, it means hindi yun business. Wala kang business. Okay? Basically, ordinary assets are, letter A, asset held for sale, such as inventory. So, ginagamit mo yung asset mo for inventory. And next is, or binibenta mo, nagbebenta ka. So, asset for held for sale. Next is, letter B is, assets held for use, such as supplies and items of property, plant, and equipment like building, property improvements, and equipment. So, ginagamit mo yung assets mo. Yun lang yun. Ginagamit mo yung asset mo. Yun nga yung mga example ng property, plant, and equipment. Yung mga buildings, property, improvements, and equipment. So, yun lang yun. So, ang ibig sabihin, anything na under siya or ginagamit mo yung asset na yon for business, it considered ordinary assets. Yun lang po yan. Pag ginagamit mo yung isang property or yung inventory mo, may binebenta ka, may business ka, and yung business na yon may pinoproduce na profit, and may ginagamit, it considered as ordinary assets. So, let us move on to our second classifications of taxpayer properties. So, let us talk about capital assets. So, capital assets is any assets other than ordinary assets. So, basically, capital assets are 1. Personal non-business assets of individual taxpayers. 2. Business assets of any taxpayers which are, letter A, financial assets such as cash, receivables, prepaid expenses, and investments. B. Intangible assets such as patent, copyright, leasehold rights, and franchise rights. So, dito naman sa capital assets, basta hindi siya under ng ordinary assets or hindi kasama sa ordinary assets na natalakay natin kanina, considered na siya as capital asset. So, in the short meaning, ang capital asset ay hindi ito ginagamit for business. So, again, ang capital asset ay hindi ginagamit for business, while ang ordinary assets is ginagamit mo siya for business to make a profit. Then, hindi nagnenegosyo yung property na yun. Walang negotiation, walang exchange, walang sale. So, like for example, ikaw ay isang sole proprietor. May negosyo ka, may sarili ka ding lupa. Hindi naman ginagamit sa business, hindi ginagamit yung lupa sa business mo at naisipan mo siyang ibenta. So, again, like for example, sole proprietor ka, may sarili ka ding business, sole proprietor ka, then may sarili kang lupa. And then, yung lupang yon ay hindi ginagamit sa business mo. And naisipan mo siyang ibenta. So, yung lupang yan na hindi naman siya ginagamit for business mo, yung lupang yan is tinatawag na capital asset. Kasi hindi naman siya naging bahagi ng negosyo mo. Meron ka lang sariling lupa na gusto mo siyang ibenta, pero hindi nakatayo ang business mo dun sa lupang yon. Kung matatawag siyang ordinary assets if yung iyong business is nakatayo mismo dun sa lupa, sa mismong lupa mo, na pagmamayari mo. Kasi, ibig sabihin nun, nagkaroon na ng ginagamit mo na yung lupa mo for your business. So, ordinary assets na yun. Pero kung hindi mo naman siya ginagamit for your business, ibig sabihin, hindi siya ordinary asset. Capital asset na po siya. So, another info, nakadepende kasi ang assets sa kanilang nakadepende ang asset sa kanilang taxes. So, kailangan malaman ng lahat kung under ano ba siya, under ordinary assets or capital assets. So, kapag ang binebenta mo ay ordinary assets, ang tawag sa loss and gain niya is ordinary loss and ordinary gain. While naman sa capital assets, ang tawag sa loss and gain nila is capital asset loss and capital asset gain. So, yun nga, importante na ma-identify kung anong klaseng asset ang meron ka. Kasi doon nga nakadepende, at yun nakadepende kung yun ay ordinary assets or capital assets. So, yun lang yun, yung classifications ng taxpayer's property. It can be ordinary assets na ginagamit mo siya para sa business, or the capital asset na hindi mo siya ginagamit for business. So, yun lang.
So, hello everyone, my name is Edwin Balmes and today we're going to talk about analysis of property held by the taxpayer. So, before we begin, let us first understand who is the taxpayer. So, taxpayer is someone who is required by the law to file and pay their tax as imposed and prescribed by National Internal Receipt Code. A taxpayer may be classified into two, which are the individual taxpayer and the corporate taxpayer. So, pag sinabi nating individual taxpayer, this is the natural person with life, living, or sa madaling salita is tayong mga tao. Natural person with income derived from within and the territorial jurisdiction of taxing authority. Kung natatandaan nyo yung tinakal natin last chapter, ito yung mga include sa ordinary assets, yung RC, NRC, RA, NRA, etc. So, ang individual taxpayer ay ina-analyze into two properties, which are the personal asset and the business asset. Pag sinabi nating personal asset, ito yung mga property that involve thus not use for business. Does not use personal properties. Ito yung mga property na hindi involved dito yung business transaction. On the other hand, the business asset is an item for value owned by company and creates or benefits a form. So, ang business asset is nakaklassify din into two taxpayer properties, which are the ordinary asset and the capital asset. Sa ordinary assets, this is an asset that used in business or na-include dito yung mga inventory. Pumapasok din sa ordinary assets yung mga property used in trade or yung mga business subject to depreciation. For example, yung mga laptop na ginagamit natin. So, dito palaging involved yung mga regular sales of good or services for profiting para kumita sila or para magkaroon sila ng gain. Pag ordinary asset, tandaan lang natin na ito yung asset na ginagamit sa business at ang ordinary course nito ay mag-create ng profit. So, pag yung asset na binenta mo ay ginamit mo sa business, papasok siya sa ordinary asset. On the other hand naman, ang capital asset naman ay kabaliktaran nito. It is not for sale in the ordinary course. It is capital asset if it's not used in business. Capital asset include other property held by the taxpayer. So, for example, yung gitara ko, hindi naman siya for sale at hindi rin siya ginagamit sa negosyo. That's why capital asset siya. So, let's move on to corporate taxpayer. Pag sinabi naman natin corporate taxpayer, it shall include partnership, no matter how created or format. When we say corporation, it means malawak yung sakop niya kasi nga corporate from the word itself. So, meaning, meron din siyang ordinary asset and capital asset. So, napaliwanag ko naman kanina na pag ordinary asset, yun yung mga asset na ginagamit mo for business. Kapag capital asset naman, it refers to all property held by the taxpayer, whether or not connected with his trade or business, and which not include among real properties considered as ordinary asset. And that is the analysis of property held by the taxpayer. So, let's move on to asset classification is relative. The classification asset or properties as ordinary asset and capital asset does not depend upon the nature of the property, but upon the nature of the taxpayer businesses and the usage and its usage by the business. So, by means of that, yung properties na kinaklasify as ordinary and capital asset is hindi lamang nakadepende sa nature of the property, kundi nakadepende ito sa nature ng taxpayer sa business at sa usage niya sa business. So, For example, a domestic stocks is an ordinary asset to a dealer in securities, but it is capital asset to non-security dealer. So, alam naman natin na when we say stocks, ito yung mga stocks ng mga foreign companies na traded in a various stock exchanges. Ito yung mga stock outside na tinitrade. So, domestic stocks is an ordinary asset to a dealer in securities, but it is a capital asset in a non-security dealer. Because the security is tradable financial asset of any kind, so naging ordinary asset siya sa dealer. Capital asset naman siya kasi sa capital asset, it is not traded on public exchange as stocks and bonds. So, depende sa usage niya sa business kung siya ba ay papasok sa ordinary asset or sa capital asset. So, let's have another example. A vacant and unused lot is an ordinary asset to a taxpayer engaged in the real estate business, such as a realty dealer, realty developer, or lessor. But it is a capital asset to those not engaged in the real estate businesses. So, eto naman yung vacant and unused lot ay pumapasok sa ordinary asset. Kasi involved siya sa business. Yun yung mga realty, dealer, and the developer, lessor. Anything that gain profit and financial or involved in any business transaction is an ordinary asset. And those do not engage in a business assets such as real estate business is classified as capital asset. Interestingly, the revenue regulation classify real and the other properties acquired or the ROPA by banks as the ordinary asset even if banks are not actually engaged in a realty business. This is an apparent recognition of the fact that ROPA normally acquired and sold by the banks in the normal courses of business. However, ROPA is in a form of domestic stocks held by banks or capital asset. Under RR 6 2008, stocks classified as capital asset means all stocks and securities held by taxpayer other than that dealer in securities. So, the revenue is classified as the ROPA or the real and other properties acquired is an ordinary asset. Kasi kahit yung banks ay hindi nag-engage sa realty business, kasi ang ROPA, ang normally acquired niya is sold by the banks and their normal courses is a business. Kasi ang ordinary asset and normal course nito is business. So, yung ROPA is formed as domestic stocks that held by the banks. Kaya naman, ang capital assets niya, kaya naman, siya ay capital asset. Dahil according sa RR6 nga, 2008, ang stock is classified as capital asset, meaning lahat ng stocks and securities na held by the taxpayer is capital asset maliban lang sa dealer in securities. And that is why asset classification is so relative. That's all. Thank you.